The narrative centers on a young couple, Fabiola and Roy, along with their young daughter, Teresa. Recently, Teresa has been experiencing nightmares involving a large dog, a situation stemming from the fact that their neighbor owns a German Shepherd that does not exhibit a friendly demeanor towards her. Following a basketball game, Roy engages in conversation with their neighbor, Shava. Both parties are eager to enhance the relationship between their families, recognizing that the dynamics between their wives could be improved. Ultimately, they devise a plan to share a dinner together that evening. Subsequently, Shava and his wife, Anai, visit to extend an invitation for dinner. Fabiola and Roy express their willingness to attend, but they are unable to leave their daughter unattended. Therefore, they request that the neighbors secure their dog temporarily, allowing Teresa to join them. Anai, though hesitant, consents to the arrangement, as she is not fond of the idea of confining her dog. That evening, during dinner, while the dog remains secured, the adults discuss their professional lives. It is revealed that Shava and Anai's initial meeting occurred while they were involved in efforts to rescue pigs from a breeding facility, a tale that certainly surpasses the typical "we met on Tinder" narrative. It becomes evident that both individuals are deeply committed to advocating for animal rights. As the discussion progresses, their dog Jagger unexpectedly begins to bark loudly. This disturbs Fabiola, who had assumed the dog was secured. Anai attempts to calmly introduce Jagger to Teresa, but the dog resumes barking, which frightens the young girl. Frustrated by the situation, Fabiola seizes her daughter and exits the premises in anger. Upon returning home, Fabiola vents her frustrations to her husband. She expresses her belief that they share no common ground with their bothersome neighbors. Additionally, she is irritated by the way the neighbors treat their dog as if it were a child the following day. Before heading to school, Teresa discovers that her favorite doll is missing. The physician informs Fabiola and Roy that Teresa has sustained a serious injury, which may result in a loss of mobility in her arm. The young girl requires therapy to enhance her mobility. Upon learning of the incident, Shava and Danahi visit the hospital, bringing a stuffed animal dog as a gift for Teresa. However, they decline to apologize for their dog's actions, expressing confusion as to why Teresa was in proximity to their pet in the first place. Fabiola, visibly upset with the couple, refuses to accept the stuffed toy and engages in a dispute with them. That evening, Roy contacts the police to report the incident, but they inform him that it does not fall within their jurisdiction, thus preventing any action from being taken. Determined to address the issue, Fabiola proposes reaching out to her friend Marcos, a lawyer with connections to local authorities. Roy supports this idea and promptly calls Marcos to seek his assistance. A few days later, the authorities arrive to take custody of Jagger. After searching the entire house, she suddenly spots Jagger destroying it. In a moment of courage, Teresa attempts to retrieve her doll by picking up a stone. However, before she can strike the dog, it retaliates and bites her arm. Just as the situation escalates, Fabiola arrives with dog repellent and sprays it on Jagger to deter him. The narrative then transitions to the hospital. Anai cries out and objects vehemently, demanding that they leave him be. She even suggests that they should take the girl instead, asserting that she is to blame, yet her pleas fall on deaf ears as they forcibly remove the dog. At this juncture, the situation has completely spiraled beyond Roy's control. His friend opts to take Jagger to an illicit kennel, where he will be euthanized in a particularly brutal manner. Back at their residence, Roy and Fabiola engage in a discussion about the events that transpired. They ponder the morality of their actions and begin to assign blame to one another. Roy expresses regret over involving Marcos, believing that they should have refrained from contacting him initially. That evening, the couple experiences an unexpected power outage in their home. Meanwhile, Teresa awakens from her slumber, insisting that she saw the dog watching her through the window throughout the night. Her mother comforts her, suggesting it was merely a nightmare and encouraging her to get some rest. The following day, Roy and Fabiola discover that the power outage was the result of someone tampering with the electrical system near their home. A neighbor informs them that Anai had been seen lurking in their backyard the previous night. Consequently, the the couple resolves to speak directly with Shava to prevent any further incidents. In an unexpected turn of events, Shava acknowledges his wife's error and expresses regret for the trouble caused. He further reveals their decision to vacate their residence and embark on a new beginning elsewhere. Prior to their departure, they leave a stuffed dog at the home of their neighbor. Regrettably, they also vandalize Fabiola's car by slashing all its tires. It seemed too good to be true. That evening, Roy and Fabiola experience a sense of relief as their unsettling neighbors are no longer present. However, Teresa awakens once more, insisting that the dog is observing her through the window, which alarms the parents and prompts them to investigate. As they look outside, they sense an unseen presence watching them. Roy proceeds to examine the yard, ensuring the safety of his wife and daughter inside. However, Fabiola soon discovers that the burglar alarm is malfunctioning. Meanwhile, Roy receives a call from Marcos but is unable to respond due to his preoccupation. Fabiola then answers the call on their landline phone. Marcos informs her that he attempted to investigate the unsettling neighbors and uncovered some deeply troubling information about them. It appears that Shava and Denahi have been using aliases throughout their time in the neighborhood, and this is not the first occasion they have engaged in such behavior. Meanwhile, in the yard, Roy stumbles upon a half-smoked cigarette and realizes that their neighbors are still lurking in the vicinity. Resolute in his intention to put an end to the alleged pranks, he embarks on a quest to locate them. Back at the house, Teresa clutches a stuffed animal dog and remains close to her mother. At this juncture, Fabiola observes that one of the windows is ajar and suspects that someone else may be inside. Consequently, the two of them secure themselves in Teresa's room for protection. As Roy continues his pursuit of the neighbors, he is abruptly startled by a man donning a dog mask. Peter is on patrol in the area. The masked man then assaults him, inflicting a wound with a sharp object. Meanwhile, Fabiola attempts to divert her daughter's attention when they are suddenly interrupted by knocking at the door. They both choose not to open the door. However, an outsider forcibly breaks the lock. It is revealed that Anai is the intruder, donning a different dog mask. In a bid to prevent the intruder from entering, Fabiola exerts all her strength to secure the door from within. In the process, she inadvertently injures Anai's palm, successfully keeping her at bay. After a brief interval, another knock resonates on the door. Fortunately, they recognize Roy's voice. Although he is severely bleeding from a wound on his knee, he has managed to reach the room. The three of them are finally reunited, yet regrettably, they find themselves unable to summon assistance. With no alternatives available, they are compelled to exit the room in search of a phone. At that moment, they come across Shava and Denahi in the living room, both adorned with dog masks. Their intent is clear: an eye for an eye, a life for a life, as they seek retribution against Teresa for the death of their child, Jagger. Alarmed, Roy decides to remain behind to delay them while his wife and daughter flee to find help. Fabiola and Teresa successfully reach the home of their neighbor, Jorge. Despite ringing the bell, no one answers the door. Fabiola then directs her daughter to enter through the pet door. The child successfully manages to do so, but shortly thereafter, Java ambushes Fabiola from behind. Inside the house, Teresa discovers Jorge bound and unable to move. Meanwhile, the Pitagoons are engaged in a game of chess, with all the pieces represented by pigs and cows along the edges. Shava subsequently drags Fabiola back to her residence before departing once more to capture Teresa. Upon arriving at Jorge's house, he finds the man free and defending the young girl. Jorge, a local boxer, swiftly overpowers Shava, leaving him injured on the ground. Following this confrontation, Jorge and Teresa attempt to flee, unaware that Anahi is lurking nearby. As they run for their lives, she suddenly emerges from behind a bush and slashes Jorge's throat, killing him instantly. Meanwhile, the injured Shava returns to Roy and Fabiola's home, where he discloses his plan to the captive couple, stating that he intends to make their daughter Teresa suffer in the same manner as Jagger did. Shava subsequently presents an electrocution device and a dog repellent, intended for the torment of Teresa. However, before Anai arrives with the young girl, Shava seeks to entertain himself at the couple's expense. Roy, weakened from significant blood loss, requests a drink and a cigarette. Given their previously strong camaraderie, Shava concedes to his requests. He confidently releases Roy from his bindings and attempts to ignite the cigarette. Unbeknownst to Shava, Roy has devised a plan. Once liberated, Roy swiftly seizes the dog repellent and sprays it into Shava's face, just as he is about to light the fire. This results in Shava suffering severe facial burns, prompting him to retaliate by activating the electrocution device and fatally shocking Roy. Fabiola is profoundly disturbed by the sight of her husband's demise, left with no choice but to grieve for him. Meanwhile, Anai disposes of Jorge and returns home with Teresa, only to discover her husband's face is entirely scorched and Roy is lifeless. This revelation devastates her, not solely due to her husband's injuries, but because he was responsible for Roy's death. She had intended for Fabiola and Roy to witness Teresa's agonizing demise before meeting their own end. Nevertheless, Anai escorts her husband to another room to tend to his injuries. During their absence, the young girl cleverly finds a way to liberate her mother. Just as they are on the verge of escaping, Anai re-enters the room. However, before she can respond, Fabiola seizes a bottle and strikes her on the head. Consequently, Anai collapses and strikes her head against a piece of furniture, rendering her unconscious. For someone who advocates for activism, her treatment of the trees is quite poor. After some time, Shava returns to the living room and finds his wife motionless on the floor. Overcome with grief, he seizes a knife, resolved to avenge her demise.
He searches the entire house and ultimately ascends to the upper floor, where Fabiola and Teresa are concealed. The two do their utmost to remain undetected, but the noise from the stuffed dog betrays their position. In a surge of fury, Shava launches an attack on them, and Fabiola retaliates with all her might. She ultimately manages to grasp a hook and inflicts a wound on his neck. Shava is left incapacitated, groaning in agony as he gradually sinks to the floor. Taking advantage of the moment, Fabiola and Teresa swiftly exit the room and make their way downstairs. They proceed to the living room, where Anai is found lying on the floor. Fabiola swiftly retrieves the car keys from her pocket, recognizing that it is their sole means of escape. After a brief period, the mother and daughter manage to reach the vehicle and enter it. However, just as they are about to ignite the engine, Fabiola, driven by a desire for vengeance, resolves to ensure that Shava is permanently eliminated. She leaves her daughter in the car and re-enters the house. In the subsequent scene, Fabiola seizes a golf club and ascends the stairs. Determined to deny Shava any opportunity for survival, she strikes him relentlessly until he is utterly lifeless. With her quest for revenge accomplished, she descends to reunite with her daughter. Yet, upon reaching the ground floor, she is alarmed to find that Anai is no longer present. This realization instills fear in her, and she quickly comprehends that her daughter is in peril. Fabiola then rushes outside, only to find that it is already too late. It becomes evident that Anai, previously thought to be dead, was merely unconscious. Upon regaining consciousness, she ventured outside and abducted Teresa. The scene transitions to a police station, where an investigation is underway to locate Anai. 1. A collection of photographs and newspaper articles pertaining to the recent horrific events has been affixed to the investigation board. Nevertheless, the detectives are struggling to achieve any favorable results. As time progresses, days evolve into weeks, yet the police have been unable to find Anahi and the young girl. They remain unaccounted for, leaving no evidence behind. Fabiola, now isolated and in despair, fervently implores the authorities to return her daughter. Concurrently, in a concealed location, Anahi has undergone a complete transformation in her appearance. She resides alone in a luxurious home. We observe her returning from grocery shopping and proceeding to the kitchen to prepare a meal, seemingly for her dog. However, as she descends to the basement to serve the food, the chilling truth is unveiled. It becomes apparent that the meal is intended for Teresa, who is confined in the basement, restrained by chains around her neck and limbs, akin to a dog. A series of images and newspaper clippings related to the recent horrific events have been attached to the investigation board. However, the detectives are finding it difficult to achieve any significant breakthroughs. As time elapses, days turn into weeks, and the police remain unable to track down Anahi and the young girl. They continue to be missing, leaving no evidence behind. Fabiola, now feeling isolated and powerless, urgently appeals to the authorities for the return of her daughter. Meanwhile, in a secret location, Anahi has drastically altered her appearance. She lives in solitude within an elegant residence. We witness her arriving home after a grocery run and heading to the kitchen to prepare a meal, seemingly for her dog. Yet, when she descends to the basement to deliver the food, the grim reality is exposed. It is revealed that the food is meant for Teresa, who is imprisoned in the basement, shackled by her neck and limbs as if she were a dog. Thanks for watching, and do not forget to hit subscribe down below.